everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Reading Party podcast with Megan and Lexie. This episode continues our season looking at modern retellings of the Iliad and the Odyssey, ancient epics known for both brutal violence and instances of sexual assault. This episode is not suitable for under 18s. We hope you have your favourite beverage and snack ready to go, because we've got our teas and are ready to start spilling the tea on our latest ancient story. Last two episodes.
I know.
I am actually a little traumatized.
Are you?
Oh God. I mean, again, it's the story of Troy. We all know how it ends, but I am mildly traumatized.
What was most traumatizing about it?
I think the part where they burn the entire city, take all the women captive, and then throw a baby off a tower.
Yeah, I was like, that seems like it'd be pretty triggering.
Yes. Anyway, that's the very end, so we should
Yeah. We'll start with
lead up to that
7.
delightful experience.
So anyway, yeah, well, let's start with episode 7, directly after the death of Hector.
Mm-hmm.
So we essentially start, and then the Greeks are in their camp, and you see people coming to Achilles always so they keep asking for Hector's body. Would you please return it? And he's like, no, they will sing stories about my rage. And which I find hilarious because he says it in the calmest tone ever.
Odysseus is like, what do I tell him? And he said, fine words for my rage, Odysseus. It's a great line. It's an absolutely great line. So Priam goes and just rides into the camp and is like, take me to Achilles. And they take him and he sits outside the tent and is like, I'm staying here until he talks to me. And if the sun comes up and I get killed by a bunch of Greeks, so be it. But I ain't moving.
He was kind of like a petulant child. And I love how he played it, where he was like, he just sits down. I'm not moving. Go tell him. And they're like,
Achilles, there's this king outside your tent sitting on the ground. He's not going away. Do we turn the hose on him? What happens next?
So it was quite different from how the movie did it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any notable differences or preferences?
Not especially. I liked this kind of relationship, very obviously small, brief relationship built up between Priam and Achilles in this scene. I enjoyed Achilles asking about Hector. What kind of a man was he? And it felt like he found some common ground both with Priam a little bit and also some respect for Hector, which he'd clearly been missing after Hector killed his partner. I did find it a little odd that Achilles declared Hector as without honor and should not be buried, and showed no mercy to Patroclus, which is odd because Achilles himself is not known for showing mercy to people that he's in battle with. And again, it works for the character. He's just lost someone he loves very deeply. Of course, there's a lot of anger and fury, and this should have been different. But taking a step back and thinking about it in a little bit of a wider lens, you wouldn't have shown mercy either. You would have been somewhat disdainful at the lack of bravery, lack of honor. And again, Patroclus, it's not like he was sitting there begging for his life. He said no, that was it. And I think that's probably quite a common response to the thought of someone running you through. Yeah, so that bit just caught me off guard a little bit, but I did enjoy the almost mutual respect that I felt the two ended up with at the end of the scene. Sorry, that absolutely didn't answer your question about the movie. I don't know, actually. I don't know. How about you? What were your thoughts and preferences?
They're really different because I feel like in the movie version, Priam just kind of comes in. He's close to tears, and I mean the dialogue helps that it's very, very different as well. But I mean, I would say it is shortened, but in the movie you get the sense of I loved my son from the moment he opened his eyes to the moment you closed them. Please, 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 and he basically gets very emotional, and then he's just the interactions are so different, you know, because in one, he comes in, he kisses his hand, and he's just like, you know,
Mhm.
enemies can show respect, just please
Yeah.
give me the body. And in this one, I feel like the begging, the level of begging that he was forced to do was different. In this one, it's beyond just give me my son. This one was like, I will just stay here in front of all your men instead of an empty tent, and I will gladly die. And then he literally starts breaking down. He's like, his mother will die. So I found it was just interesting because it's like this one, it's very much the whole family, and it's more than just him. And the movie one was like, I love my son, so give him back.
Well, Hecubit didn't exist in the movie. She was...
Yeah, it's just, I don't like the assumption that, like, since she didn't exist in the movie, really, that there was no mother. And I'm like, but I do also like the difference in portrayal, and the relationship I feel shaped by the difference in portrayal was quite interesting, because I think you see in the movie with the Brad Pitt version, he's kind of disdainful, you know, he's kind of like when Prime first comes over and kisses his hand, you know, he kind of like backs away, and he's just like, ew, gross, creepy old man. And he kind of has to be talked into it, and then he kind of gets up and walks away. And in this one, to me, I thought it was very much like he was pissed, but he was trying to make connections, and you could tell that even if he was pissed at Hector, like the whole time, he had nothing but the utmost respect for Priam in this one. He's not like, ew, gross old man, this is beneath you. It's, I'm so pissed that he killed Patroclus, and this is about me.
I think that's probably a common theme between the TV show and the movie, is Achilles has a level of empathy in the TV show that doesn't really come across in the movie so much. There's some empathy there for Briseis, but that's kind of about it. Achilles in the TV show is like, we're here for someone else's wounded pride. These people haven't generally done anything, and I'm just going to sit in my tent. Like I think he says at one point, like, what have the Trojans done to me? Essentially that I should go and slaughter them because you got your wife stolen, sir.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, obviously that happens when you have more time to flesh something out, like in a miniseries.
Yeah.
Like a movie is hard because it's like, well, we do only have like 2 hours or whatever to get this across. So you're kind of like, okay, things have to be skipped. But yeah, I don't know. So it was interesting to see. And then, I mean, what happens next is kind of the same, right, between the show and the movie, which is that he puts Priam on some kind of cart or chariot and then sends him with the body. Although, you know, the big notable difference was that Achilles had Briseis back in the movie and then sent her back with Priam. And in this one, he never gets her back. And I was like, what? Like, wasn't that a bit jarring to you?
I did keep waiting for her to be returned, and then Achilles was dead. So, oh, okay, this no departure from everything else. Yeah, it was unexpected. It's my theme word for this episode or this series. I think it was unexpected.
Yeah. Because I just kept being like, no, she's gonna be returned.
No,
she comes back, and then you just see the last shot of her in the tent, like trying to assassinate Agamemnon, but then Odysseus like walks in before they break the truce essentially, and yeah, then they're just like, well, she never gets through to it. Yeah, and then Odysseus comes over to her, and he's like, "You shouldn't have done that," and she's just like, "I don't care. I don't have anything left."
You didn't see anything.
Yeah, and then he was surprisingly nice to her, because he was like he took the knife, puts it like back in her hand, which, LOL, what? And then it's like, escape when the attack has started. My men won't stop you.
Yeah.
And you're like, but is she not? Is she really gonna run away? Yep, she runs away.
She does, and Agamemnon is, as one would expect, pissed. So
I was a little upset that the duel between Achilles and Penthesilea was so quick.
I was too. And
without much fanfare either.
Yeah. I feel like they did her a disservice with that a little bit. Because they build up a lot. A, what a skilled fighter she is, and B, how much she wants to kill Achilles. It's her main character feature, I think.
It is.
So I was hoping for a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't know. It was interesting, the battle sequence they had, because you have like Achilles being like, Priam, where is the liar? So he just like gets on his random chariot, and then like the armies run toward each other, and then you just see Achilles' chariot go like straight through, and like
He's like, I'll see you guys later. Have fun. Bye.
so it's this really fun. So they have this really fun shot where you see once he's gotten through the army, he doesn't circle around and start attacking from behind. He just keeps going straight, and so you're like, oh, that really happened. Okay. And then all you see is like their only line of defense is like Penthesilea, and like 5 or 6 Amazons are just like standing there. And then he's like, okay. So he like jumps down from his chariot, and then he kills the 5 or 6 like Amazons quite quickly, which I was a little upset about. Because Amazons are supposed to be, you know, great warriors and blah blah blah, and they don't die that quickly. But then again, I was like, well, it is Achilles, so maybe it'd be more unbelievable if it was some random person. So to demonstrate his skill, maybe that's why it was so easy. But then you just have like Penthesilea, and then you get this really great stare from her, and then she just takes out her swords. He takes out his, and it's like game over. And then I was a bit shocked that like after he kills her, he just keeps on riding alone toward the city, and you're like, really? No. Oh, okay. And I was even more shocked when Priam comes out and
he's
armor.
like right there, elderly king with sword. Cool, interesting.
Yeah. And Hecuba's like, don't go. It's Achilles. He's gonna kill you for sure, old man. And he's like, I must go. I'm going. And she's like, okay, bye.
No choice in this.
Yeah. So it was a little interesting. So as one would expect, Achilles versus Priam was like super fast. Essentially, Achilles like walks up to him, punches him in the face, and he falls down, and that's it. And you're like, okay. But before he can get to killing him,
Alexander to the rescue.
Shoots Achilles in the heel.
I know it's Achilles' heel. I know that's the whole point, but he shoots him in the heel, and then Priam stabs him, and then Alexander shoots him.
Yeah, it's through the neck.
Yeah, and that's kind of it. It was very also fast. Actually.
Well, they can't really drag it out.
No, that's true. That is true.
Because even in the movie version, it's like you get the one big shot through heel, and then Brad Pitt kind of just goes, you know, and like
when he's down,
big. But then he has to shoot him with like 3 more arrows, and he still kind of keeps walking and walking until finally he's like, okay, I need to sit down and pull these out, and I'm gonna die. And then he somehow has enough time for a last kiss with Briseis, and like to whisper things to her before just keeling over and dying. And I was like, but no. Would you though? Like, I'm sorry, I'm like a heel and 3 arrows in you, and you still have time for this like weepy goodbye. You can only, but even this one, like shot in heel, stabbed in like
his lung or something,
or something, and then usually shot from arrow to neck would just kill you, and yet he has enough time to talk.
Yeah, they have this lovely brief conversation where they all call each other liars and traitors, and then Achilles declares Odysseus would never lie, and we all know that Odysseus just lied. And the Trojans are like, well, someone lied to you, friend, because we didn't kill any Greek soldiers during the truce. So then Achilles is, and that seems to be a theme with this series. As someone dies, they realize the truth, or they are told something that is very upsetting to them, and you're like, no, just let them die. Let's not dissemble their entire world while they're dying.
Yeah, I don't know why it's they very to do that. Unpleasant.
It's just all very, very tragic. Very tragic.
Yeah.
And I realize how bizarre and ridiculous that sounds when talking about the Trojan War. The most tragic event recorded in human literature. But yes, tragedy. Yeah. Lots of tragedy.
Lots of tragedy. Yeah. So also,
and we skipped over. Sorry, we skipped over so Hector is buried, and Andromache essentially accuses Helen during the funeral feast of like causing the whole thing. And Alexander says, "Take Helen away." And Helen's like, "Why the hell are you taking me away? I didn't do anything." And she confronts him afterwards, and he says, "Well, Andromache is in mourning. I'm not going to have her dragged out of her husband's funeral feast. It was easier and safer to remove you, my dear.
Yeah. Which is true, because she doesn't do anything really in like violent. She doesn't she'll like make her opinion heard, but then she's quite easy to deal with.
She'll barge into your private meetings, but that's really as far as it goes.
And then she'll just demand to be heard. Or say that things have not been discussed to her satisfaction,
Yeah.
But it's true though, because it's like, we all know it's true, because they're just like, and then they're starting to be like, I don't think Pandros was really the traitor. And she's getting all nervous.
It builds the tension really nicely towards the last episode. And I liked how they did it, because again, a lot of the people watching are going to know how this ends. So while there's a lot of emotional tension because you've come to like have a relationship with these characters and you know they're going to die and you don't want to see them die, but like ultimately you know what's going to happen. I feel like the Pandros Helen treachery subplot thing lends a nice little additional tension built on we don't know what's going to happen. Is Helen going to be discovered? Because she's such a minor character in the source material, which is funny to me. She's such a minor character that they can do things like this. They can add this whole little subplot in without really disrupting an awful lot of the rest of the story. So you're watching this and Andromache keeps saying Pandros is no traitor. I've known him since I was a child. And we have this Greek woman in our city. Why is no one listening to me? Someone needs to listen to me. And the men are like, there, dear, you've just lost your husband. And Priam says in the final episode, you must think of your son now. Yes, I must think of my son. I need someone to listen to me. And it's kind of a corollary to Cassandra. No one is listening to the women, and they really should be listening to the women. And I know that Helen did not deliberately share this information with Achilles. It was completely accidental and inadvertent, but Pandros wasn't a traitor. It was Helen.
Although because of all that Alexander basically like has repeated, like there's nothing you could do that would make me not love you. So I kind of wondered like if she had just confided in him, because he was kind of put in charge of the investigations. So like I do kind of wonder like what would have happened if she told him the truth and it was like, look, Achilles sneaked in so he could kidnap me, and I was like afraid, and like oops, I didn't mean to, but like things had to be said, and I did what I needed to like survive and stay here with you or whatever. I wonder if she could have told him and had him maybe help her.
I was expecting her to tell him about it.
Do you think he would have helped her though, or would he have? Because he got this, so it's like you start the series where he's like, no, I'll do anything for you. It's all about you. He was willing to like leave the city, but then it's quite interesting because he takes a turn because after Hector dies and he's put in charge of more things, he gets this greater sense of responsibility over the city, and so it's really interesting, especially from the movie as well, because in the movie version, all he ever does it's very Helen centric, only her. I don't care about anything else. This one, he starts to get this like, yes, dear, you're important, but actually nothing is more important than the city.
And I have family. And Priam tells him when he takes over from Hector, Priam tells him, look, your wife is clearly very important. That's well and good, but the city comes first now. And he really seems to take that to heart. So I suppose my answer is, I think it would depend on when in the series she told him. I think if she told him as soon as he got back from Cilicia, I think he'd have been more likely to keep the secret and do things to try and direct attention away from her. I think as the series progressed, he would have been less likely to do that. I think if she told him in like the final 2 episodes, I think he'd have said something to someone.
I think so too. And even if it was accidental, they definitely but that's the thing. If he'd told them and then they wanted to throw her out, and he was very adamant about her not being, separate, like I wonder what that would have done too. No, I kind of, I was like, yeah, I understand why they didn't have her tell him, but I'm kind of curious to see what would have happened if, like, she had, just to see. Mm. And also, I guess, skipping a little ahead, she does, spoiler alert, set, what's his real name? Oh my God. Okay, well, yeah, I know, me too. Well, she sets him free basically after he's been like whipped to a pulp in the prison. And she basically goes to him and says, okay, go back to the Greeks with a deal. I'm proposing. I can't see all this carnage anymore. Like, I will return willingly if you make Menelaus promise that no one in the city will die, not Alexander, not anyone. Just like take me and leave. And I thought that was so interesting because, well, one, the movie version, no, they never had, like, other than that one little scene where she was like, I'm going home. Then everything's like, no, I'm staying with you. So I found it interesting how she offered herself this way because a lot of, well, one, it's not in the original source material, but even some of the brunt of the popular retellings of this myth, they don't have Helen being the facilitator for like the Trojan horse stuff because, I don't know, but I feel like everything you normally hear is that the Greeks just build the horse, pretend to go away, and then the Trojans bring it in, and then soldiers sneak out, and the soldiers open the doors and let everyone in. So I thought it was really interesting to have Helen be the facilitator in this one.
The thing that jumped out to me, apart from having Helen as the key figure in the final attack on Troy, the thing that really jumped out to me is how many times Helen talks about having a daughter in the last episodes.
Yeah.
She doesn't mention her except once when Andromache asks, and then unprompted, it's like 2 or 3 times. I think she says to Alexander, I left my daughter for you. And then when she's talking to Telamon, I'm ready to come home to my daughter. Like, and I couldn't tell if it was sincere emotion and she's been away for so long, she's realized exactly what she's done to her daughter, or if it was kind of like buyer's remorse and she's trying to come up with any reason to leave Troy because she knows by this point that Andromache is never going to forgive her and she's never really going to be accepted. And even if they win, she can't stay in Troy. She has to do something else. And I felt like her message to Menelaus was both, I need to stop the fighting, but also me staying here just isn't tenable anymore. There's been too much destruction. There's been too much death. If I stay, I will always be a reminder of this. People will turn on me. I have to get out now while I can. And talking about my family and talking about my daughter is kind of like the only option available to me to kind of save face almost as a woman in this society. Like, I need to go because of my daughter. Like, it's the acceptable response rather than I'm going to be killed if I stay here.
Because it's interesting because it's like you kind of see this crisis because she even says to like the spy the Greeks left behind at one point, I think she was just like, well, he was just like, okay, you need to leave now, or the bargain's broken, whatever it is he says. But it was notable because she looked at this dude and was like, get me out of this. She was kind of just like begging, like, no, literally, get me out of this. How do I escape? But it is really interesting how I felt like she never was like, to me, it didn't feel like she suddenly grew a real conscience. I think it was more, it's like the all-encompassing fear of just, I'm in too deep on both ends, and she's struggling with her identity, so she doesn't know which one to pick fully at any time. So
when she's at the gates of the city, like, Menelaus and Odysseus have by this point killed 4 Trojan soldiers, and each time it happens, she, like, you get a close-up of her face and she's very, like, resigned, I suppose. Like, this has to happen so I can leave. And I didn't know whether the director was going for genuine emotion, or if it was, this is how I am supposed to be responding.
I didn't see it as she suddenly developed real emotion. Like I just, that wouldn't, to me, it wouldn't be in line with how she's been the whole series. Like clearly she has feelings, of course, but like to see the whole time how she, like, I don't know, like just like judging based on her reactions to a lot of things. She was just so conflicted about everything that she was kind of just like, okay, I guess I don't, like to me, almost like Helen the entire series has been performing different roles. Like she never really feels like she comfortably, genuinely settles into herself, because she goes from being wife of King of Sparta, where she's miserable and drugging herself, to, okay, I'm gonna run away with the, well maybe, okay, when she runs away with Alexander at first, okay, maybe that's like her genuine thing, but then she gets to Troy and then she's clearly kind of uncomfortable because she's like, they'll never accept me, they hate me. So then it seems like she's forced to act like, you know, what they would hope the ideal princess of Troy, foreigner coming and trying to make a good impression of herself is. So no, I just think that she's, ever since she got to Troy, like she was performing so much that she didn't know any other way to be. And even at the end, like what is it she says to Menelaus, which was kind of chilling, honestly, to hear, which was, she was like, you can take my body home, you can have it in your bed, but my heart will remain here. And you're kind of like, but like, really? I don't know. I just I'm always so conflicted by the end of the series, because I'm like, Helen, she's this, but she's that, but also, you know, I don't know. I feel really confused about her.
That's a really good way to put it. She's a confusing character. Like I want to like her. I really do want to like her, and I do believe at the beginning she really was maybe not trying to do what was best, but trying to do what was best for herself after a lifetime of duty. And she felt more human at the beginning. By the time we get to the end, it's so much has happened, and she's been the cause of so much destruction. Not even just the war, but looking at what goes on inside Troy. Telamon has killed people to keep her secret, and she has like facilitated him killing people to keep her secret. And I think we're supposed to believe that she feels remorse for it, but she does it very easily, very, very easily. And I just felt it off for me.
Yeah. Like, if she really wanted to be a Trojan, wouldn't she have just told the Trojans about Telamon from the minute she knew he was there? So, like, she hides. She keeps a secret. She knows he's here. When he's finally discovered and he's being tortured, he just kind of looks at her and he says this thing, which the Trojans obviously don't understand, where he's like, oh, I was sent here by Odysseus just to, you know, seek out and keep an eye on things. And they're like, well, what does that mean? Like, what are you supposed to keep an eye on other than, you know? And so it, you know, he basically doesn't say that he's there for Helen, which I would find really mysterious if I were a Trojan, because there's got to be more than just, I'm here to observe, you know. And then yeah, when he's trapped and she wants to, it's like she does everything out of convenience, because it's like she wasn't willing to go help him when he was being beaten, even though he kind of like says I believe my loyalty will be rewarded, wink wink, and she just kind of like doesn't react. But like, so she could have freed him at any time, but she doesn't until she wants to make the deal. So then she goes in there with the knife, gives it to him way too easily, like elicits no promises or anything, and then all she does is talk to the guard, and she's like, may the gods have mercy, or whatever, and like, bam, he's dead.
I do wonder if she's acting, if so much of her responses to things are out of guilt. I wonder if because of what happened with Achilles and I feel like that started everything spiraling downwards for her, because Andromache was a challenge, but I felt like she was kind of coping with that. And then Achilles came and Pandora started getting suspicious, and it's just, everything just started falling apart.
Yeah, so I
don't
always
know.
just wonder, I'm like, are these the actions of a desperate woman, a confused woman, or just a woman who literally, like,
is just trying to keep herself safe?
I'm like, is it truly like self-preservation? Is it like an attempt to be noble? Like I'm just like, what is your deal?
Yeah.
Because you would feel like all of her actions are self-preservation, right? Maybe.
I mean, I think so. But then, so I don't know if it's supposed to be self-preservation. Then right at the end, when she says to Menelaus at the gates, "No, I can't go," if it's like final desperation and realization that she's trying to protect everyone, but actually the cost to herself is too great to leave. But I don't know. Like, by that point, you personally are responsible for the deaths of so many people in your like own escape attempt. Actually, you just suck it up and you leave. You don't just stand there and say, "No, I can't do it." No, actually, sorry. You leave now. I liked her less and less as the series progressed, I think.
Yeah.
It was quite cleverly done, actually, because it's so slow and kind of insidious. And the Trojans welcome her with open arms and they love her. And then as it goes, I mean, obviously Andromache never really liked her, but I feel like as it goes, everyone was a little bit more and more and more concerned, upset, as more people die. Like, why is it we're doing this? And then, as expected, Menelaus completely betrays her and says, she says, "You promised on your honor that no one would be hurt." And he's like, "I have no honor because of you. So I'm going to kill as many people as I feel like." It was, the last episode was quite harrowing.
Yeah, because that one was just like brutal, burn, kill, pillage, and
yeah. And you really get the desperation of the Trojans coming through as they fight and fall back and fight and fall back, and then everyone's trying to unbury these tunnels. I don't know if it was a deliberate connection to the movie, but I liked that the plan was to go through the tunnels, and then they get through the tunnels and there are Greeks there, which is, when you think about it, not terribly surprising. It surprised me as I was watching. I was, oh shit, well, that's not going to work. So they all fall back. And
yeah. Also, what did you think of this portrayal of the Trojan horse? Stylistically, it's so different from the other.
I really, really liked it. My question with the Trojan horse is always, where did they get the time? And how did they build this massive horse without the Trojans noticing? But, that's little nitpicking questions. No, I really, really liked it. I thought it was really cool.
I just want to know how they got the material.
You do have to ask where they found a massive trident.
And the blue stuff, because I mean, and then the red jewel. I mean, I'm kind of like, look, the one in the movie was believable because it's basically a bunch of old wood, which is what they would have had from like burned ships and stuff. A trident, okay, all the spears, fine, but the blue, the jewel, the whatever. But also, I was like, well, how could they fit all those people in there if like the entire midsection was like grain? Yeah, because they drag it into the city and they empty the middle, and there are shots of them pulling. It's like covered with shields. There's shots of them pulling the shields off. I'm like, where are the? Aren't there supposed to be Greeks in there? Yeah, because it's like, well, when the dude is even like, "What's in there?" and he's like, "Grain," and then he takes a spear and just like starts to like poke up. I was like, oh, why would you say that? And then I'm like, oh, okay, fine. But I'm like, but the legs look so uncomfortable. Like, how could you comfortably stand or sit in the legs and not make noise? It was, yes. I also always question the whole, let's steal someone else's offering to a god so that it will bless us. It strikes me as a little bit backwards, because surely if you steal an offering from a god and then eat it,
You are not therefore honoring the god in any way, shape, or form. You are merely stealing from them. And as we've already seen, gods are not terribly forgiving entities.
No,
So,
they really don't like people touching their stuff.
No, they don't. No, they don't. So, and given that the plan, as recounted by this Greek soldier, is to let the tide wash out the horse as an offering to Poseidon, and then Priam or Alexander or someone says, let's take it back to our city and steal their blessing. The gods will favor us instead of the Greeks. I'm like,
that's not
how and why is this going to work?
Yeah, I was like, if you want one so badly, just build your own. Like,
I know, like, I know they had to find a reason for the Trojans to take this giant fucking horse into their city that didn't seem completely beyond belief, but yeah, that logic did not land with me.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was interesting because, yeah, they have sort of the priests come out. There's like 3 of them. And it was interesting. They didn't say his name, but if you know famous Greek art or other myths, you would know that's Laocoon. And his, I think those are supposed to be his sons. But like, I thought it was, I mean, obviously in a series chock full of things, you can't get everything, but he was kind of famous for being the Trojan priest who suggested they burn the thing, and then he gets killed because of he was suggesting this. And it's such a famous statue. So I don't know. I was kind of like, I was hoping that they would just be like, oh, ha ha ha. I was hoping even like Prime would just be like, oh, Laocoon, no, we must honor the gods or something. So I was a little sad, but I still kind of saw it was like a little nugget for art history for those looking or who know the story. So yeah, so basically like they take over the city, and then once they get in, I thought it was quite interesting because in the movie they don't really show what happens to the royal family other than they kind of flee toward the like escape tunnel, and then they leave, and all you get is this scene with Briseis and Achilles, and that's how the movie kind of ends. Did you like the expanded sort of look into the palace in their last moments?
It was necessary given how much time they've spent with the royal family, and I think that's a very deliberate framing that shifts things from how the movie was kind of like narrated almost. The movie is very Achilles centric, and the TV series really is focusing on the people of Troy and the Trojan royal family. So I think it was necessary to see what happened to them. I think leaving it kind of ambiguous would have been
strange.
Yeah, odd. So I did like seeing that. Well, I mean, like it was very tragic and very distressing, but I think necessary for the story to be completed. So we see Priam's sons dying, and as Hector did, doing everything they could to defend their city and defend their families. We see the women being essentially rounded up and taken captive. And oh my goodness, the scene with Andromache and Odysseus. Odysseus finds Andromache. She comes out of this little alcove thing, and he so gently says, "Come with me." And she goes with him. And at that point, I was like, oh, okay. She's going so that her baby can stay and live, and he thinks that it's just her. Mm-hmm. And then you hear the baby crying, and they stop walking. And then they go, and it's okay. And you think, okay, maybe we're not going to be killing babies. And then at the end, like the city is burned, they're all like in the lower town ready to leave. And Odysseus, like again, gently takes Andromache, says they have to go now. And you hear the baby crying again, and Agamemnon stops. And at that point, my heart just dropped out of my body, because Odysseus having compassion and empathy works with the character they've built for him. He's very sympathetic. He has already, like, we've seen him tell Briseis she can leave. We know that was successful. We know he told his men not to harm her. His character is built in such a way that him letting a baby live is very much it works with who he is. Agamemnon, no, he is going to have that baby killed, and he does, and he makes Odysseus do it, which like also hurt. I mean, the Andromache's response to losing her baby, beautifully played, absolutely heartbreaking, and Odysseus just, I mean, he doesn't want to, and it's going to, well, Andromache says as they leave Odysseus, may your crimes haunt you like ghosts, and that one is haunting him and will for the rest of his life. And it was like that whole sequence of Andromache, Odysseus, and Astyanax. I can never say that name. Astyanax.
Astyanax.
Yeah, there we go. Astyanax. I add an extra syllable, which is not supposed to do that. But that whole little sequence is, if for me, it was one of the most painful sequences of the whole film. Even with all the death and destruction that's gone before, that was hard watching.
I mean, the killing of children, I think, is like, anyway, I mean, like, Iphigenia was so hard right at the beginning, real tone setter, but at the same time, like, she was older. It wasn't a baby, and they even gave her agency at the end because she was struggling for, It's
like, if we're going to do it, then
you know what, then let it be without struggle. And then she just stands there and it's like, okay, do it. So like, even they could give her agency enough to choose to die honorably and quickly. But with the baby, who's how old did that baby even look? I mean, I know he's supposed to...
he looked
2,
not quite, but he looked roughly the same age as my twins, and they're 1 now, so he was an older, and I don't know if excuse me, I don't know if that was deliberate in order to show the passage of time, or if that was working with small babies is really, really hard, so let's just get a child that is young enough that this could potentially have been the right age. But yeah, I
feel like it served to show the passage of time, because Hector died at least in year 8 of the war anyway, 8, 9, something like that.
Yeah,
because he did die significantly before, so it tracks that the baby had to be at least 1.
That much older. Yeah.
So because when the baby was born and when the baby was young, they used a real baby.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So I feel like, no, this was like passage of time. But yeah, no, it was so hard because I just, I saw, it doesn't look like a little alien anymore. It's like child. So then you're like, oh no.
I will confess to like pressing the fast forward button through Odysseus's walk up the wall. I was like, I can't watch this. I'm just going to skip ahead.
And it's slow too. Like I was like, can you just have him like walk up like a normal person? And if he's going to do it, just do it. But it's like, they have this slow sort of like walk, and it zooms in on his face and he looks all haunted. And then he gets like to the top of the wall, and the acting is brilliant because you see
it's fantastic.
The face twitches, and a part of this I think we should explain also is that yes, he was ordered to do it, but he did try to say no. Like they did try to make him sympathetic and for us to feel bad. But Agamemnon, being the ass that he is, threatened and said, if you want your child to live, you will kill this one. And so well, unfortunately, threaten a parent about their own child
to bring something out.
Like, you could have a lot of empathy for other people's children, but like at the end of the day, that's what I appreciated. It was a very human response from him, where he was like, I don't like killing children. I don't like killing a 1-year-old. This is horrible. But at the end of the day, he did react like a parent would and was like, well, this is a powerful king and he could come and take my child, so I will oblige. But yeah, it was very hard. And the way they shot it too, it was very clear what was happening, but they kind of implied at the end, because like you have this dramatic shot of like the bundle falling, but then they like kind of cut away when it would hit the ground. So then it pans. I think it pans to like Andromache's face actually, and then you just have her like start crying, and you just sit there and you're like, I feel awful, awful. Also, I did want to point out that since Hecuba was, a person in the series, in Trojan Women, she's taken with the rest of the women as a prize. And so I thought it was interesting that they have her commit suicide here.
That whole last scene with her and Priam was, I think, very well done. They're in their bedchambers. Priam has his armor on. He's ready to go down fighting, and he's just holding Hecuba. And then you hear the soldiers coming, and he tells her to hide herself, and she does. And they come in, and Agamemnon kills Priam pretty quickly. And then you hear this like scream, well, not screaming, but like crying, loud crying.
No, it was like she was like, you just hear, and you're like, what?
Yeah, no, that's a better characterization. And she's done something, and Agamemnon goes through, and she's cut her wrists.
And then dies basically right there on the bed. So I kind of, it was beautiful, I guess, when it's like she wanted to die in her city, follow her husband, not be a slave. But also I'm kind of like, well, that doesn't track if you read other like ancient material, and she's taken as a slave. But okay, we'll just ignore that. I mean, I suppose it's still wrong, but I'm like, I mean, it's better than not having her at all in the movie.
Agreed. And I think it works again with her character. The characterization in this is fantastically consistent. But throughout the whole thing, she and Priam have been kind of an inseparable unit. You don't often see one of them without the other on screen. And they always talk about how decisions they make are made together. And she's a very family-focused, family-oriented person. And it culminates in almost her entire family being killed. A couple of her children are taken, and her husband is dead. And it is in keeping with her, I think, as a person, to prefer to stay in her city and die than be taken by the Greeks. So we should talk briefly about the gods in the final episode before we wrap up, because they've been curiously absent. Zeus tells Athena, Artemis, and Hera not to interfere in the final days, years maybe, of the war, and they don't. They essentially just disappear. And then you have the final shot of Aphrodite,
like she's looking horrified, and like she almost looks at Alexander, who's like dead on the marriage bed, like she's just kind of like, oh my god. And then you have the other two just
standing there staring at her like this wouldn't have happened if he'd chosen one of us. And I'm like, well, I don't for one second believe that the spurned two goddesses, whoever they may be, would not have responded in a similar manner. And then you have Zeus at the end, just standing outside the city. There's a shot of him turning away in this gathering storm, which then is carried into Odysseus sailing away on his ship, and there's this like storm
brewing.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah. Andromache's curse is going to come to fruition, my friend.
Found it quite interesting as well that usually they say they burn Troy to the ground, leave no survivors, and this, that, and the other thing, but based on the actions of certain people, Aeneas kind of survives, and because Alexander told him to like run and hide, and somebody must survive. So he just like emerges from like a pile of bodies, and you're just like, oh, I am here, and you're like, whoa. So he kind of comes out to the city, sees it burn, but then you see like Briseis just like walks back in randomly, and she's like, hi.
Yeah, and the two boys that Telamon had been staying with throughout most of the series, so they hid when the Trojans got into the city, and like I was kind of waiting for Telamon to be the person who finds them, and he does. He's with another soldier. He says, I'll check this back room, and he turns and he sees that it's these kids, and he says there's this like briefly tense moment that's not really tense, because he's not going to turn them in. You know that. But there's a little bit of attention. And he says, no one here. And then they leave. So those two kids survive. So they're in the city, and Aeneas is there. And yeah, Briseis just walks in. And the smallest child runs up and gives her a hug. And that was a little odd.
Mhm.
What is it? Just because she's a woman, are we giving her a child to hug, or
That's what I want to know,
because
because I'm like, that's terribly like, well, it's kind of sexist to just be like woman.
because
So
he's standing
automatically,
there with his older brother who has saved his life.
and then it's just like there's a woman, so obviously, yeah. And it's like mommy figure, and you're like, no, but brother.
I am
Yeah,
glad that they survived. I'm glad that Briseis survived, but that
me too.
that little it was a little bit superfluous.
Yeah. So I thought it was, and then quickly, what did you feel about the last shot of the entire series? Because like, were you expecting them to sort of pan to something else, or?
No, I didn't want the story to end there, but that was like a personal.
Mm.
I need this to keep going, mainly because I love the Odyssey. I want to see what happens to Odysseus. But no, I felt like it was a fitting end to the series that we'd been given. How about you?
Yeah. No, I definitely felt it was fitting. Me too. I mean, I love this story, and I love the series, frankly. Um, so yeah, I was a little disappointed, but no, I thought it was still pretty fitting, pretty good, pretty accurate. So, it's and it's more abrupt. So when comparing it with the end of the Troy movie, you can clearly tell one is not here to just be pretty and sort of wrap things up in a bow. Because that one, it ends with, the movie at least ends with, you have Sean Bean's like voiceover about walking with giants and heroes as they're like having Achilles' funeral pyre in a burned Troy. Like, okay, random. And then so it ends just like with the beautiful whatever and the swell of music. And this one's like very down to earth. This is just like you see them going, and it's like quiet.
It doesn't try and disguise the tragedy of it.
No,
Even,
they just
and
leave it.
yeah, and
It.
again, the whole series has been very blunt almost about exactly what's going on. The movie, like we've discussed, it's for a different audience. It's a very different medium. It's Hollywood glamour. It's
Mhm.
like
It's
prettied,
pretty.
kind
Yeah,
of,
it's
even though it's a brutal war. This is not pretty, and it's not that I feel like they're deliberately making sure that they don't make you feel comfortable with what has
no.
happened or how it's ended. Um, I
Yeah.
as uncomfortable as it was to watch, I appreciated that quite a lot.
Yeah. No, I mean, and again, as we've been saying throughout the whole series, like stylistically, it's very different, but I think it is very fitting because I think you're going to always have people trending toward making adaptations that are a little too pretty for, my taste at least. So to have this be very blunt and straight to the point, and I actually felt that they played around with silence very well, because I think they kind of use silence in the cinematography, and the sound editing as almost like a theme in it of itself, because many shots, many scenes, they had such interesting either lighting or sound going enough to like really make you focus on it as someone watching, and to just sort of realize that, like, oh no, we're not doing the pretty thing, we're not just gonna, like, there's nothing I hate more than, a movie's about to end and then you just like they layer in some like pretty music, and then it's like, okay, we're gonna go out now, and you'll have some pretty, Christina Aguilera like singing something, and then you're like, no, I don't want this. Like, this is just like quiet, 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 end, and then you're like, oh, okay. Can you say you really like one better, or are they just too different to really compare, like apples to oranges?
I do think they are too different to draw a fair comparison, but overall, I think I did prefer the series. I found it much more interesting in terms of plot, at least, and characterization. And again, that's an unfair, well, maybe not unfair. It's, as we've said, much easier to do that with a miniseries than with a movie. But I didn't really feel any sympathy for any of the characters in the movie at all. And in the miniseries, almost everyone has something redeeming about them. Even Agamemnon at the very beginning is a sympathetic figure, and you can see what happened to him. And I hate him by the end, but I can see why he is the way that he is.
Mm-hmm. I think personal preference again. Yeah, so they're too different to adequately. If it was 2 movies, then that'd be one thing, or 2 series, that'd be one thing. But no, I do feel that they are apples to oranges because you could say I like character development, but then again, one has 8 full hour plus episodes, the other is like a 2-hour movie. So I think no, you can't. But I guess my way of judging it would be personal preference, just in terms of stuff I like. I would say I prefer the series, and 2, we can actually compare at least with closer accuracy to the original source material, and this one definitely is, because it's like obviously it would be hard, because like it would be hard in a movie, but like they just did not have characters who were quite important.
I'm not sure they've really tried with the movie.
Yeah, they didn't try, but I understand, like, especially for a movie where you're supposed to be following people, like, how do you introduce, like, a massive cast? And that's, again, like, a benefit of a series where you can introduce a massive cast. But I don't know. I guess, like, at least add 1 or 2 back in the movie. Like, and then in terms of, killing your main characters, Agamemnon, Menelaus, Ajax, like, yeah. So in terms of just, like, source material-wise, yeah, definitely this one as well. But they're both enjoyable in their own ways. Definitely the series should not be viewed by young children. Do you think this would be suitable for like young teenagers?
I think it depends on your teen.
Okay.
And it like some episodes I would be comfortable watching with my 15-year-old. Some episodes not so much.
Okay.
So viewer discretion is advised.
Yes, and with the movie though, would you watch it with 15-year-old? Would you watch it with younger than that? Because there's still a bunch of violence, obviously.
There is, yeah. It's not quite as graphic, but it is there. I mean, yeah, probably 15. I think would be reasonable. I don't know what its actual movie rating was, but
I think PG-13.
Yeah,
because there's like one sex scene where it's kissing and nothing else, and then murder, like violence. So I'm kind of like, yeah, that's enough for PG-13.
Excellent.
Yeah, but overall, I think I really enjoyed watching these, especially back to back. I think that's a really fun decision that we made, where we were like, let's watch these back to back, and
that way we can really compare them.
And if you're sitting at home and are thinking of doing it, I would highly recommend it, because
it was a good thing to do.
Yeah, it's a bit long, but yeah, it's kind of fun if you just really want to see differences.
Just set a week and a half aside and blow through everything.
Exactly. I don't know. So would you watch the series again? I remember you said you'd watch the movie again because you enjoyed it. Would you watch the series again?
I would. I probably not for a year or so. I have some series that I will watch multiple times in a year. This is too heavy.
Yeah.
It's too dark. I need to go and watch some comedy now. Or Disney movies for like a month until my brain recovers.
Yeah, I feel like this is like good for because I know some people, they read things annually. So like, my friend reads Wuthering Heights every year. So I'm like, if I were to read or watch the Iliad once a year, this would be the once a year reminder.
There you have it. This is the perfect once a year rewatch. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I really hope you enjoyed the show, and we'd be delighted to hear about what your thoughts are. Next week, we are going to be starting our review of 1,000 Ships, which is a book by Natalie Hayes. We will also be having an interview with Natalie in a couple of weeks' time. This book was really fantastic. If you haven't read it yet, definitely get a start before our next episode. And I hope you enjoy it as much as we did.
Hey, thanks for listening. Don't forget to leave us a review, and you can also follow us on social media at The Reading Party Podcast. If you'd like to leave us a book or movie suggestion, then email us at thereadingpartypod@gmail.com. See you next week.